administration has been pretty clear that we'd like to see some responsible reforms to the National Flood Insurance Program. I don't think now's the time to debate those things, as we need to help people that have pending claims, but we'll debate that late fall here as we come up with good policy ideas to help move that back into a risk-based, private sector, hopefully supported solution.
Tom Bossert, the Homeland Security Advisor at the White House today, talking about the National Flood Insurance Program. This is viewers and voters who were polled say the president's response to Hurricane Harvey: approved 44%, disapproved 26%, unsure 30%. The National Flood Insurance Program, by the way, even if people had insurance, is underwater itself. It was created in 1965, really the only source of flood insurance for Americans. Last reauthorized in 2012, and it's up again September 30th. It currently is in the hole, almost $25 billion, and that directly coincides with the debt ceiling that is coming due. So you have all of that as Congress gets back on Tuesday, plus the funding itself for the recovery. Let's bring in our panel. Charles Hurt, opinion editor for the Washington Times. Anna Palmer, senior Washington correspondent for Politico. And Jason Riley, Wall Street Journal columnist and senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Okay, Jason, first, before we talk about the flood insurance program, the funding battle, you heard the vice president there in that press conference, you know, saying, listen, Congress is going to figure it out. It's going to be bipartisan. But we've seen these things before, and this is going to be a huge disaster recovery effort.
It will be a big effort, but I think the money will be there. I think that the political optics of not sending the money, I think, would be too damaging to not get on board here. So I think we will see some bipartisan support for doing this. And I think that the flood insurance program will be allowed to increase its debt. We'll be able to borrow more from the Treasury. He'll get the money. And the only, like Mr. Bossert said, the only issue here is going to be whether some fiscally responsible lawmakers attach some serious reforms to it this time. I mean, this is it would be hard to come up with a program more in need of reform. For around 50 years, we've had the federal government sending taxpayer-backed insurance to people who build in flood-prone areas. It makes no sense whatever. All the wrong incentives are in place. All it's led to is more building in these areas because the owners know that if there is a flood, someone else is going to be picking up the tab. So the goal here should be to get the federal government out of the flood insurance business and let the insurers price this to market.
And the White House was asked, the Treasury Secretary was asked whether the administration is going to push to tie the debt ceiling increase to a funding request. They wouldn't answer the question. It's processy, and Congress will get into it, but it's an interesting prospect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sources on Capitol Hill were telling us this week what they wanted to try to do was try a really neat bow on all of these problems that they have. Funding the government, raising the debt ceiling, and trying to fund this disaster relief, because you kind of have a coalition that has to vote for it if you have all of those three things. It's going to be very difficult. Right now, we have a story up that just broke saying that the Capitol, the Senate Republicans and House Republicans want to actually pass a small package on disaster relief as soon as this next week, which means that wouldn't happen. So you're going to have a lot of problems coming up here in the next several weeks.
But, you know, there are the hawks up there, the deficit hawks, Charlie, who say we're approaching $20 trillion in debt, and we have to stop the bleeding somewhere. And how is this all going to work?
And a lot of those deficit hawks are from right there in Texas, where so much of this is going on. But I think that Jason is probably right about this. That and this is why people hate Congress, because that you have this massive problem like the flood insurance program that they never address the problem.
They just punt.
They keep punting it, and then every time there's a catastrophe like this, then it's everybody running around worried about trying to figure out how to do it in an emergency environment. Nothing brings lawmakers, Democrats and Republicans, together like spending money, and so I would imagine that they will probably come up with something kind of bipartisan. But hopefully, people like Ted Cruz, John Cornyn, who have a lot of sway in the Senate, will. Why is this an emergency that the federal government is protected from having to put some skin in the game? If this is an emergency, the entire federal bureaucracy should be forced to put some skin in the game and give up something. Why not cut to offset what everybody wants to give people in Houston.
And there is the question that we will start to get the answer to Tuesday. Meantime, on DACA and the so-called Dreamers, word is that the president is going to end that program with some caveats.
In a Trump administration, all immigration laws will be enforced. We will immediately terminate President Obama's 2 illegal executive amnesties.
It's a very, very tough subject. We are going to deal with DACA with heart.
Their parents and their relatives made the decision to come here. They didn't knowingly violate the law.
They didn't all come as kids. Some did. Many didn't. They're up to 37 years old now.
President Donald Trump, it is your time to protect and defend DACA.
Sources are telling our people at the White House that the president, as soon as tomorrow, is going to possibly end the Obama-era Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, kind of grandfathering in the people who are here, which is the caveat.
Yes, exactly. I think he'll end the program, meaning no more people can have that designation. But the people who have it now will be able to keep it, although they won't be able to renew it. And I think Trump is playing maybe the long game here in that he can use this DACA as a bargaining chip for getting other immigration items on his agenda, such as funding for a wall and so forth. So I think that's the way he's looking at this issue. And by doing it this way, he gets to avoid, putting potentially around 800,000 people in a state of possibly being immediately deported. He won't have to do that if he allows them to sort of grandfather out.
Yeah, they insisted at the White House that the decision was not final yet, but quickly, your thoughts, both of you.
Yeah, I think it's all signs point to he's going to end DACA, but you've already saw Mike Kaufman, who you played a little bit of sound of before. He has already said on Twitter that he is going to do a discharge petition in the House, which would mean they could bring up a vote on an act that would actually allow these Dreamers in an amended form to stay there. I think you're going to find widespread support in both the House and the Senate on this.
The problem all along has been that President Obama did this as an extra legal action. He didn't have the constitutional authority to do it. He himself admitted that he didn't have the authority to do it. If Democrats wanted to do this, they ran all the tables in Washington after Barack Obama won the presidency. They could have done it then. Instead, they gave us Obamacare.
Another battle to come in Congress come Tuesday. Panel, thank you.